Okay, so you've been given a leadership position. It's day one. What is the tone that you want to set with your team? Is it better to show that you are strong and decisive, in control, and won't put up with any nonsense? Or is it better to show that you are warm and approachable, that team members can count on you to have their back and support them? Let's look at an example. Shanti is the new supervisor. On her first day, she brings donuts for the employees. At the morning party, she has her employees take the lead in discussions, and then lays out her vision for the team. At the end of the party, she explains her open door policy, and she tries to express a desire to run the unit like a family. Down the hallway, Sharon is also starting as a new supervisor. On her first day, she schedules a board meeting. At the morning meeting, she discusses her vision for the team, and then asks them for comments and feedback. At the end of the meeting, she explains that she will respect her employees' time and interests if they can do the same, and she tries to express a desire to run the unit fairly. Assuming equal leadership capability and equally effective teams, what do you think their two teams will look like 3 months down the line? Which work unit will have stronger identification with the team? Which unit will be more disciplined? Which unit will be more focused on their short-term goals? Which unit will show more team loyalty and trust? Now the tricky one. Which unit do you think will be more productive? The concept of a psychological contract can assist in understanding the consequences of developing these two types of leader-member relationships. A psychological contract is a set of implicit expectations about employee-employer relationships that can affect work behavior and attitudes. It is not the formal contract of employment, but rather it reflects the mutual beliefs, perceptions, and obligations surrounding the interpersonal relationship. On the one hand, a leader can develop a relational contract. This relationship is characterized by effective commitment. The leader and followers move toward more collective goals and interests, and work efforts are partly driven by loyalty, trust, and sincere concern for others. On the other hand, a leader can develop a transactional contract. This relationship is characterized by instrumental exchange. The leader and the followers are more likely to look after their own interests, and work effort is negotiated through incentives and discipline. Now, returning to our question, which unit will be more productive? Shanti's unit with a well-developed relational contract, or Sharon's unit with a well-developed transactional contract? If you said, well, it depends, you're on the right track. Relational and transactional contracts are not an either-or distinction, but rather the endpoints on a continuum. And just like leadership style depends on the objectives of the team, so too does the effectiveness of the psychological contract. Relational contracts work well for longer-term relationships, among leaders with lower levels of reward and coercive power, and with tasks involving more uncertainty. Transactional contracts, on the other hand, work well for short-term working relationships with a clear hierarchy, completing tasks with clear objectives and more formal expectations of exchange. So, the type of leader-follower relationship should really depend on the task at hand. If you know you are a Shanti and you naturally foster a relational contract with your employees, consider the obligations that accompany these types of bonds, and when it might be appropriate to use a more formal exchange-based work relationship. If you know that you're a Sharon, naturally driving a transactional contract, consider the limitations of exchange-based relationships, and when it might be more effective to promote more interdependence and loyalty with your followers. Approaching psychological contracts with a more strategic orientation can help you to find an effective balance between the two. The nature of your contract is also important because of the costs involved when employees believe that you, the employer, has failed to live up to your obligations. A significant body of research identifies a broad range of outcomes that follow from psychological contract breaches and violations. Feelings of betrayal and anger, distrust, reduced employee well-being, increased turnover, and even deviant behavior like employee theft. Given these outcomes, it is valuable to be aware of the type of psychological contract you are building with your employees, and consequently, what their expectations will be about your relationship obligations. But of course, leaders do not necessarily form equivalent relationships with every one of their followers. Research on vertical dyadic linkages has identified that different employees might describe the same supervisor very differently. Rather than a leader developing a consistent leadership style and type of relationship with all of his or her employees, leaders differentiate between followers. Leaders naturally see some followers as in-group members who perform when empowered, building a relationship characterized by trust and loyalty, while other followers are seen as out-group members who need monitoring and incentivizing, developing a relationship that is absent of trust and loyalty. The subsequent development of leader-member exchange theory, or LMX, further contextualizes this basic idea by specifying the qualities of leaders and followers that tend to develop stronger working relationships. LMX theory also clearly documents that the quality of LMX has a strong impact on a broad host of organizational consequences. Not only do leaders treat high LMX employees differently than low LMX employees, that lower quality of treatment translates into less motivated and less engaged workers. However, it is also important to note that instead of thinking of LMX as an inevitable differentiation between followers, leaders can think of LMX as a developmental aspiration for future followership. Greater numbers of high-quality LMX relationships in a team seem to produce more effective group dynamics. Thus, leaders may focus on transitioning their employee relationships from one of strangers to acquaintances, and finally to mature relationships. While stranger relationships focus on self-interest and immediate demands for reciprocity, mature relationships pursue shared team interests, with reciprocity manifesting as largely unspoken loyalty rather than tit-for-tat exchange. So, as a leader, it is worthwhile being aware that you will have a natural tendency to form closer bonds with some employees than with others. However, to really take your team to the next level, consider how you might build stronger relationships with all of your employees, even those who you don't naturally click with. Another way to think about your workplace relationships is to consider your current levels of trust. Do you trust your team? Do they trust you? Do they trust each other? These levels of trust are an indicator of a more relational contract, or higher LMX. While trust is generally a good thing for team effectiveness, trust is particularly important in certain work contexts. Associate Professor Nicole Gillespie explains.
Trust has long been considered important for high-performing teams. However, the research examining the relationship has actually shown mixed evidence. Some studies have shown a strong positive effect of trust on performance, and others have shown either a weak effect, no effect, even a negative effect. To better understand the impact of trust on team performance, we recently conducted a meta-analytic study that examined the relationship between team trust and team performance from 112 independent studies. This was published in Journal of Applied Psychology in 2016. So this study confirmed that team trust is positively related to team performance. Our study further showed that team trust has a positive influence on performance, even after controlling for the team's trust in the leader and the past performance of the team. Importantly, our study identified 3 conditions under which trust is most important for team performance. So trust is most important for team performance when team members need to work interdependently. That is, team members need to work interactively with each other to get the job done, like in a football or basketball game. In contrast, trust is less important for performance when team members work independently and put together their individual contributions at the end, such as like a relay race. Trust is more important also when team members differ in their skills. So trust is still important in homogeneous teams, but it's more important when teams are working in a cross-functional way. That is, members need to contribute different skills and knowledge. Finally, trust is more important when team members hold different levels of authority in the team. Trust still influences performance when authority is shared, but it has more of an influence on performance when authority is differentiated across members, such as in a cross-hierarchical team.
In sum, trust is particularly important for team performance in cross-functional and cross-hierarchical teams that need to work interdependently. Basically, the more interdependent the members are, the more important trust becomes for performance.